Never again suffer from low self-worth. Keep watching. I'm Damon, this is Life Mastery Gym, and I teach people just like you cutting-edge NLP processes and techniques so that you can master your life and take charge of your destiny. So if that sounds good, make sure you click that subscribe button right down here so you can get these videos on a regular basis. I wanted to make this video for two main reasons, and that is, first of all, I suffered from low self-esteem and low self-worth for most of my life. I wasn't even really willing to admit it to myself for a long time, and finally when I was, that's whenever I could go to work on it and actually do something about it. And I think a lot of people are sort of in the same place. They don't really realize that they're suffering from a feeling of low self-worth or low self-esteem, so they don't know what to do about it other than just try to push it away because it doesn't feel good. The second reason I wanted to make this video is because of all the things, all the wonderful things that come out of personal development and self-improvement, this is the one that almost everybody gets wrong. And when I say everybody, I don't mean the people like you watching this video wanting to know how to increase your self-worth. It's really the people who are trying to teach this stuff or trying to teach people how to boost their self-esteem and their self-worth who really get this wrong. And in fact, they get it so wrong that they're actually doing more harm than good. And if you've ever tried any of these things, you probably know what I'm talking about. You've tried them and they didn't work, like affirmations, like walking on fire or walking on hot coals. Trust me, you don't need to walk on coals or fire or whatever it is, or glass, to increase your self-worth and self-esteem. And affirmations are probably making things worse. And there's probably a laundry list of things that people do in order to try to boost their self-esteem and their self-worth. What I will show you in this video definitely works. I have been doing this kind of work on myself until I got myself where I needed to be. And when you do get yourself where you want to be, it's not something you have to keep doing. It's not something you have to keep putting effort into. When it's done, it's done. And I've helped many people who I've coached, who I've taught, do the exact same thing and finally resolve this issue. Any attempt to increase your self-worth only feeds the problem. It only locks you into the problem because you are feeding a duality. Now, I did a video about non-duality and the duality of self and other, and why when we work on ourselves or we tell ourselves things like, I need to love myself, I need to trust myself, how that only creates the problem even more. I did a video on that and I brought up self-worth. And I said, if you want me to do a video on self-worth, let me know in the comments below. And there were plenty of people who said, yes, please do a video on self-worth, which is another reason why I'm doing this video. But I highly recommend the other video that I made about non-duality, and I will link that video to this one. You can also find it in the description below. So how are you feeding the problem if you're trying to increase your self-worth? Well, because there's no such thing as self-worth. It is something that is completely made up in your mind. Now, before you turn this video off, because this often upsets people when I say this, it makes it seem like I'm just one of those people who's like I don't know if reductionist is the right word, but this idea of like, well, you're just making everything up in your head. Your depression, you're making it up in your head. Like, I know that's not helpful. So I don't want you to take it that way. Just hear me out on this. This idea is just it's just an idea. It's just a concept. The problem is that this usually arises very early in life, so early in your life that you don't remember how it came about, but I can tell you probably how it came about. Before I explain to you how this all works, I first have to say I cannot take credit for what I'm about to teach you. This was taught to me by my mentor and my teacher, Steve Andreas, who passed away a few years ago. And so don't credit me for what I'm about to teach you. The credit goes to him. In most cases, a self-esteem issue or a self-worth issue comes from when we are very little, very young, and our personalities aren't fully formed. We don't have the protective mechanisms that we eventually create to sort of block out negativity or block out people who are making fun of us or insulting us. or to understand really what's real and really what's not. You think around the ages probably between 0 and 7 or is probably around the time that this will happen. And it happens to probably 99% of the population. I've met maybe 1 or 2 people in my entire life who I would say did not suffer from some degree of low self-worth. So what happens is at a very early age, very young age, and probably a parent, but not necessarily, it's anyone who is seen by you at this very young age as loving you, as being your caretaker, your provider, the person who keeps you alive, but not just the person who keeps you alive, the person who makes you feel loved. When that person, not by any negative intent necessarily, but it can be, but most of the time it is a limitation in the way that that person is communicating to a child that then makes the child feel like that love is conditional, like they might lose that love from that person who cares for them, who loves them, who feeds them, who clothes them. Something in the communication of the parent, the guardian, the one who cares for the child indicates to that child that this could be taken away if the child doesn't do what the child is supposed to do. That love could fall away, that this person might love the child less. And this is terrifying for a child. Now, the parent, guardian, whoever, in most cases probably doesn't mean it that way, doesn't want the child to think of it that way, but this is the way the child picks up on it. And so we have to be careful about how we talk to children because there are implications and presuppositions. And as a child is learning language, they're just trying to figure this thing out. And fear of their own safety, fear of being taken care of being loved is a very real fear for a child. So, it could have been just something as simple as, if you love your father, you would go take a bath right now. Or if you love your mom, you do your homework, you would eat some vegetables or something like that. The child might pick this up as saying, well, thinking that, if I don't do these things, then maybe mom or dad or whoever will love me less. Or maybe if I do more, I can earn more love. Or this idea of losing it or gaining it or increasing it, decreasing it. This is when a child starts to formulate these ideas. So this plants the seed of a devastating fear of losing love, of not being worthy of love, of the people who matter most to you. And a belief gets formulated around that. If I don't do XYZ, I might not be loved, or I might lose love, or I might not be worthy of love, or I might not be good enough. And so this generalization forms out of this at a very young age, and we take it with us, unfortunately, as we grow up. And the reason why we create generalizations to begin with, or beliefs, same thing, generalizations and beliefs. The reason why we create these to begin with is to navigate the world around us, to try to make meaning of it, to try to figure out what's right, what's wrong, what should I do, what should I not do. So like I said, when a child's trying to figure all of this out, they're trying to interpret language, they're trying to interpret what's happening around them. And it's very likely they will get some things wrong. You have gotten some things wrong, and that's usually where your limiting beliefs are created. But this is a really, really hard one. And I look back on raising my kids before I knew this, before I understood this, and man, I wish I would have been more careful about my communication with my kids, because I would hate to think that I created anything like this. But the truth is that even when a parent is very cautious and conscious of their communication, the child can still interpret it this way. So it's always important to make sure that a child knows how loved they are, and that it's completely unconditional, and that they can never lose your love if you're a parent or some sort of guardian or caretaker. So the result is we spend the majority of our lives, if not our entire lives, thinking that we have to earn love, that we have to earn worth, that we have to be valuable people. And now everybody likes to be useful. Everybody likes to be thought highly of. I don't know anyone who doesn't, even people who don't suffer from self-worth. We like to feel validated and valuable. But if we're always dependent on some sort of external measurement, if we're always dependent on someone else's opinion, if we're always determined on any sort of outside factors that we don't control to validate our worth, we will always experience low self-worth, and we will always feel insecure that it can be taken away from us. So the key is to be able to validate yourself. And when you're able to do that, what you will realize is that there really is no such thing as self-worth. There couldn't possibly be any such thing as self-worth, because who's measuring it? By what standard is that being judged by? Are you judging yourself? Well, how can you do that? How can you be objective about that? That's impossible to be objective about judging yourself. And I'm not saying like you would be biased in the sense that you would raise your self-worth when it shouldn't be. Actually, most of us do the opposite. We think of ourselves as less worthy. You have no place or position or standard to be able to judge that about yourself. There isn't anything. Now, there's something close to it, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but just in general, you have no way of measuring, judging, assessing your value. And the truth is, no one else does either. If you think about it, everyone has their own subjective biased opinion, and they're on the outside of you. They're not on the inside of you. And most of these people don't know what you've gone through, don't know what you have lived through, the pain, the suffering, whatever that you've overcome, the successes that you've had, the accomplishments that you've had. So no one else is a valid judge of your worth. So if no one else can judge your worth, and you can't judge your worth, how is there such a thing as self-worth? And again, this just shines that light on the fact that it's not real. It's totally made up. It's totally made up. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Damon, I get it. I get it intellectually. What you're saying makes perfect sense. But why do I still feel like I have low self-worth, even though you just told me, and I heard it, and I know it now, that there's no such thing? I know. It's a tough one. And the reason why is the programming goes very, very deep to experience low self-worth for most people. And it goes deep, and it not only does it go deep, but it's very unconscious. And what you're unconscious of, you can't change. So we have to make these things conscious again. We have to sort of bring them to the surface so that we can work on them. Before I give you the 3 things that you can do to resolve this issue, it's very important that you understand everything that I just said in this first part of the video. I get people from time to time who say, wow, why don't you just get to it? Why don't you jump to the exercises? Because the exercises won't make as much sense unless you have the previous understanding. So if you don't really feel like you understood everything that I've said up to this point, I really urge you to stop the video and start back from the beginning and watch that part again. It is super important. The next things that I'm going to give you will not make as much sense if you don't have the previous understanding. Okay, so the first thing you can do is imagine there's a baby in front of you. And imagine telling that child some of the things that you tell yourself when you're experiencing low self-worth. There's probably a voice. For a lot of people, it's a voice, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, there's a voice shaming them, telling them what they did wrong, telling them how they screwed up, telling them that they're not good enough. If you have those thoughts, if you have those voices that tell you those things, imagine there's a baby in front of you, like just a few months old, and start imagining yourself telling the baby that. Get into like the whole thing where like, who do you think you are expecting love? You didn't earn love. You didn't earn the right for someone to just dress you and clean you and change your diapers and feed you. Like, who do you think you are coming into this world and just expecting someone to do all this for you? You can stop the video and actually do that exercise, which would not be a bad idea. Make sure you come back though. So what happens very quickly when you do something like that, you might be a little hesitant to do it because it sounds horrible, right? But the truth is we're just imagining things. So I wouldn't actually say that to a baby, but if you did, what would the baby do? The baby wouldn't know any different. It wouldn't affect the baby at all. And that's precisely the point. It's so absurd to even think about. It's so absurd to actually say that to a baby. And if you think about it, how is it any less absurd for you to say that to yourself? You were once a baby. It's not even a question of whether or not you deserve love or attention and all these things. It's not a question of that at all. Why would you have to earn love, earn someone else's acceptance or value, it's silly. It doesn't even make sense. And if you have trouble doing this or imagining a baby, which I can understand, it can be a little disturbing, and that's not necessarily completely a bad thing. But imagine a dog. Imagine a dog, a dog or a cat. The dog's so happy to see you. You come home or whatever, and your dog's all excited. Tell the dog, who do you think you are to just expect me to feed you when you haven't even earned it, or give you love and pets when you haven't done anything to show that you're good enough for this? Again, it's the same absurdity. The dog doesn't care. The dog just does what dogs do. They eat when they're hungry. They go looking for attention. They go looking for love and pets. They don't consider whether or not they're good enough or whether or not they earned it. Now, I know what you're thinking. Maybe, hey, Damon, I'm not a dog. I'm a person, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't make a difference. You're a living being. The dog's a living being. And wouldn't it be great to just go and ask for what you want when you want it, to go ask for love when you want it, to go ask for attention when you want it, to just go and eat when you want to eat, and not have to worry about whether or not you earn the right to do that, the right to exist and be happy and to love and be loved. So this exercise is just about teasing out the absurdity of what it is that we do to ourselves, so that next time, if that ever happens again, it actually literally seems too silly to even entertain those voices saying those things to you. The next one is very, very simple, and it is just to stop comparing yourself to other people. Just stop. It does no good. We get locked into the duality of comparing ourselves to others because, on the one hand, it can sometimes make us feel good if we can tell ourselves, well, at least I'm not as bad as that person. At least I'm not as poor as that person. At least I'm not as sick as that person. At least I'm not as unattractive as that person, or as much of a loser as that person. But when you do that, there's another side of that polarity that is inescapable if you engage that polarity. That other polarity is when you meet someone who in your mind is better than you, and you always will. There's always somebody better looking than you, more successful than you, more accomplished than you. So if you're going to play that game, you're going to win and you're going to lose. And it's you're going to feel good about it sometimes when you feel like you can make yourself feel like you're winning, but you're going to feel terrible. The higher the win, the higher the crash will be. Step out of that completely. Stop comparing yourself to others. This will take some conscious engagement. You will need to interrupt this pattern every single time that you find yourself engaging in it. So it probably starts very unconsciously at first. You're not even realizing that you're doing it, and you're just checking out other people, or you're thinking about somebody who you saw earlier in the day or what have you. Just stop. I know it can feel like when you stop comparing yourself to others that you're kind of taking your eyes off the steering wheel or eyes off the road. It can have that kind of feeling, but I assure you there is nothing good that comes from comparing yourself to others. It will make you feel terrible sometimes, and yes, it will make you feel good sometimes, but it's not worth it. You can feel good all of the time when you stop comparing yourself to others. You will never win that game. It'll never end, and it'll just continue on and continue making you miserable. So just stop. Again, this will take some practice, but you will feel it immediately. When you stop comparing yourself to others, right away, it just goes away. And then there's no question about self-worth anymore. You're not judging your self-worth. You're not trying to increase it. And it just the whole concept just goes away. And last, but certainly not least, is more of a process. And it's the exact same process that I use when I coach, and it's also something I teach in depth. And I can link some videos to this one as well that will show you me demonstrating it or me talking more about these processes. So the first one would be to take any context in your life and identify something that it is that you want. Then elicit your values around that. And go deep with this. Elicit your highest values. And when I say highest values, you'll know you're hitting your highest values when words like love, like peace, joy, happiness, freedom, those are really high level values. So when these start coming out, and believe me, you might be thinking, well, I just want more money. Like, I don't know if all that stuff comes out of it. Yes, it does. It actually does. Pretty much anything that you want, if you take it deep enough, it goes way up to those very, very high values. Now, what these are a projection you make. You're projecting value on the things around you, on the choices you make, on the people you spend time with. There's nothing wrong with that. We all do it. It's how we know what's important to us and what choices and decisions we want to make so that we get the most fulfillment out of it. And so what those values are also an indication of what qualities you would value about yourself, or maybe qualities you also value in other people. Then you want to cross-reference to whether or not these values, these high-level values, are showing up as solid qualities of your identity, solid qualities of who you are. So when we're hitting things like joy, love, peace, happiness, and you're hopefully writing this down if you're listing your values, and then you stop and ask yourself, am I happy? And really be honest about the answer to that. And when I'm coaching people, I don't care so much about what they tell me, because people lie to themselves all the time. They often will tell you what they want to be true, not necessarily what actually is true. When I ask a person, when I elicit their values and say one of their highest values is joy, and I say, are you a joyful person? I will see the answer in their body before they open their mouth. If I see them do something like this, I know it's uncertain. Now, if they say yes right away, then I'll go, okay, that sounds pretty certain. It sounds pretty congruent. But most of the time, that is not the case. Very, very rarely have I elicited someone's highest values and they felt certain about every single one of them. So most people will feel uncertain about most of their highest values, uncertain about these high values being qualities of who they are. So what is the result of that? Low self-worth and low self-esteem. When your highest values, when you don't feel like you are your highest values, well, then you're not valuing. It's more about belief, though. You're not believing that you are of high value when you actually are. Self-esteem, self-worth goes up when you behave in alignment with a value of yours. So, for example, I value kindness. So when I do something kind, I feel good. I feel good about myself. Why? Because I value kindness and I just did something that I believe is kind. It's as simple as that. Now, the problem with that can be is, well, I only feel it when I'm doing it. You're always going to feel good when you do something that is in alignment with a value. But what happens when you stop doing it? Well, for some people, that good feeling instantly goes away, unless it is a solid part of who you believe yourself to be. If I believe I'm a kind person, even when I'm not doing kind things, like even when I'm just sitting here, I believe I'm a kind person, I'm going to feel good about myself even when I'm not actively doing something kind. And the same thing goes for joy, the same thing goes for happiness, the same thing goes for peace. If I believe I'm a joyful, happy, peaceful person, and these are my highest values, I'm always going to feel good about myself. I'm not going to question my worth. I'm not going to question my value. I'm not going to look to other people or to anything external to validate my worth or my value. Again, that whole thing goes away. It just pulls the plug on that whole idea about self-worth. And this is exactly how I did this for myself. So like I said, Steve Andreas, he taught me the thing about the baby and the dog. That was one thing he did teach me. He also taught me the part about comparing myself to others. He taught me the self-concept model. The piece that I added to it was I started to realize, he did teach me the part about values and how when you do something that you value, you feel good about yourself. That's where self-esteem comes from. It's also why you cannot go directly at self-esteem. People try that. That's what affirmations are an attempt to do, to directly increase your self-esteem, and it doesn't work. And if you've ever tried it, you know what I mean. You can pump yourself up. You can pump up your state as much as you want to and tell yourself over and over again, I'm a happy person, I'm a happy person, I'm a happy person. But if you don't really believe it, which is why you would be doing affirmations to begin with, the moment you step outside and something doesn't go your way, it will completely shatter that state and you will feel terrible about yourself and you'll be like, well, where did it go? Well, how did, what happened? But when you take the self-concept model, which was what the main thing that Steve taught me, and you use that model to take the values you value most highly and install them as qualities of who you are, that's when life takes on a completely different way. You change, you transform, and so it has the effect of the rest of the world around you seems to transform. But the truth is, it's you. It's you and your belief about yourself, which will reflect on what you believe about the world. If you believe you are a successful person, you will find success in the world around you. You will find those opportunities and you will go for them. If you believe you are a happy person, you will see happiness happening around you and you will look for ways in which to improve your life that make you happy. So how you feel about yourself, whether or not you believe you are the qualities that you value, has a tremendous effect on the world around you, and it will change. Your world will change. This was the greatest discovery I'd ever come across, and it changed everything. This issue of self-worth was completely gone once I did this. Some of you are wondering, well, how do I do this? And do you do coaching? And do you teach this? Yes to all of those questions. Some people want to learn how to do this for themselves so they can do this for themselves. And also you may be a coach, so therefore you might want to use it in your coaching practice. It makes up 80 to 90% of everything that I teach and all of the coaching that I do, because it is the most powerful model that I have ever come across. So if you don't care to learn it so much and you want one-on-one coaching, in the description below you'll see that there's a link and it's labeled for coaching. Click that link and you'll see how this process starts for one-on-one coaching. And then if you actually want to learn this, there's also a link for that too, right down here in the description. Click that link and you will find out more information about how to learn self-concept, how to use it for yourself, and also to coach others. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button. And last but not least, if you can think of a friend or a family member who would benefit from this video, make sure you share it with them. Take care.